1 year and 3 weeks after she was last seen alive, police were forced to change their focus in the Chandra Levy investigation from that of a missing person to a death. And now investigators are back in Rock Creek Park, scouring the area for clues and any evidence that foul play may have played a part in the 24-year-old's death. 9 News reporter Bruce LeShan is in the park now with more on the forensic investigation.
Now, they're also going to be looking for clues out here in the woods, and we had a chance to talk to a preeminent criminal crime scene investigator about that.
There's a cavity right here.
It was dental records and forensic science that positively identified Chandra Levy's body.
As positive as a fingerprint or DNA. No two people have the same teeth structure.
And crime scene investigator Tom Mauriello says it may be forensic science that provides answers about Levy's final moments of life. Mauriello says no one leaves a crime scene without leaving something of themselves behind. And even after nearly 13 months, some of those things, some of those clues, should still be in the woods where Levy's body was found.
Biological fluids, blood, semen, urine, earwax, all these different things from the body. We can get DNA, and DNA could be there for a long time.
Even a single hair can now yield enough mitochondrial DNA to identify a suspect.
If there are hairs nestled into the fibers of the clothing from another person, then that's positive evidence. That could be brought to one person to the exclusion of all others.
As long as you approach the crime scene as a process, that's the most important thing. The first thing in the process was to identify the identity of the body. They've done that. The next process is to determine the manner and the mode of death. Was it a homicide, suicide, accident, natural, or undetermined, which nobody wants to ever come to? The mode of death is, if in fact we believe that the body died from some suspicious means, was it a blunt force trauma, was it a knife, was it a gunshot wound, all those things. So all those things have to be eliminated or identified. Is it possible? The answer is yes.
But you don't have tissue to deal with as far as a knife wound or even suffocation. How can you tell?
When two objects touch each other, they take on the characteristics of each other. If somebody brought that body there, then something from that person is at that crime scene. I don't care if it was a year, 2 years, 5 years. It might be so microscopic that it'll never get found, but the crime scene technicians have to take that approach, that philosophy, that in fact there is something there. Now, if you find some evidence that matches up to the suspect, if you don't have a particular suspect to match it up to, then it becomes a problem. In other words, if you have a certain suspect, then you can check to see if the DNA or the hairs, fibers match up. Otherwise, there's nobody's name and address is on a hair or a fiber, etc. If it's a person who's been arrested before, most states now in the United States have a DNA felony data bank. So if there's some biological fluids, that still could be there after a year.
You could get DNA from that scene after a year?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is certainly possible to do that.
From the clothing?
From the certainly from the clothing. Right. Assuming that, the clothes, now, whether the clothes were intact on the skeleton or in the area, if those are the clothes that she was wearing during the time in question, if there was a sexual assault, then semen could possibly be there.
After this period of time?
Absolutely, absolutely.
What
absolutely.
do bones
Because we're finding semen in evidence that is stored in evidence locker rooms for years.
Right.
So yes.
What about bones? What can you learn from bones other than whether they have been broken and when they were broken?
Well, that's about it. If there's a crack to the skull, is it possible to determine whether that was caused by some blunt force trauma, or whether she fell and hit herself on a rock, etc. Certainly, by examining the characteristics of the crack, an anthropologist should be able to tell the difference between the two.
You say a process. If you approach it as a process, how long? You have parents who have been waiting and agonizing for a year. How much longer before they get some answers? The police get some answers.
That's impossible to determine right now. Again, all the information I have, as well as the media, is what we're getting from people at the scene.
Weeks, a couple of months?
Weeks, months.
Maybe even a year?
Year, or maybe it'll never be solved. Because every day that goes by is more difficult to solve any case. Because with each minute, evidence is lost. And when evidence is lost, it's more difficult.
You wish you were working at Tom?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I'd like to have all my students at the University of Maryland be part of this, because that's what we're learning at the university.
This is likely forensically, it'll go down perhaps as a classic?
Not as classic as the O.J. Simpson case, I don't think, but...
no, I mean as far as pathology is concerned.
Oh. It depends on exactly what they have. I mean, the pathologist would be the one to answer that question,
right,
based on, because he knows exactly what he has. There may be a lot of information that we're not aware of that he has that's going to make it easier.
With shows like CSI and Crossing Jordan, it also points out how key a forensic scientist is to any investigation.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Used to, got to get lucky too.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Luck is very important part of the process.
Sir, would you do me a favor, come back, see us?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thomas Mauriello.
Thank you.
Some of the investigation of Chandra Levy's death will happen, as we've just heard, in a laboratory, but other work happens out in the field where the body was found and the areas where she was last seen. Up next, we'll talk about that part of the story with William Ritchie. He ran the district's police homicide division for years.
The medical examiner is testing Chandra Levy's remains for clues as to what caused her death. And D.C. police officer combing Rock Creek Park. They're trying to uncover all the clues left at the scene.
They've been poring over the terrain near Brandywine and Broad Branch Road all day. Bruce LeShan is in Rock Creek Park right now. He has more. Bruce?
Verge, J.C., forensic anthropologists like to say that they can make bones talk. That's what they are trying to do right now with the remains of Chandra Levy. They are trying to make her bones reveal their secrets.
At the office of the chief medical examiner this evening, Dr. Jonathan Arden, the M.E., and forensic anthropologist David Hunt from the Smithsonian sift through Chandra Levy's skeletal remains, hoping they'll reveal the details of her final moments. Was her death homicide, suicide, or an accident? Sources say her skull was fractured, but it is unclear if the damage was done before or after her death.
It could have been an animal who was literally biting down on the skull that caused fracturing. And in that case, you probably could see bite marks, multiple bite marks.
Tom Mauriello has taught scores of prosecutors and police investigators the secrets of forensic examinations in 25 years at the University of Maryland. If the damage to Levy's skull was caused by a blunt object, he says the injury itself may be enough to break the case.
One hard object against another one causes scratching. In most cases, if you find that instrument, you can, in many cases, prove that that particular instrument made that particular trauma to the exclusion of all others.
Police will also look closely for any sign of shoe prints or tire tracks.
This is an imperfection right here that's unique to this particular shoe.
Mauriello says even after nearly 13 months, shoe prints could still be there, covered by leaves. And police have tracked many a killer by the unique characteristics of his shoes.
Every minute that you're pounding down on the ground with the shoe or rolling on the tire, that's causing for more imperfections to occur.
Mauriello says that good crime scene investigators subscribe to something called the theory of transference. That is, every time you come into contact with somebody, you transfer something from you to them. Sweat, DNA, skin particles, hair, semen, what have you, something. And all of that evidence should, in microscopic quantities, perhaps be out here someplace in the woods. It just may be very, very difficult to find. Virgin JC, back to you at Broadcast House.